As a newcomer to equity investing, don't you just have this feeling you don't know where to start when you first start looking at a company? Trust me, I've been there. Unfortunately, every business will have its idiosyncrasies, and the devil is always going to be in the detail. Thankfully, an industry analysis framework is applicable to every single company you will ever look at, regardless of its industry. So in this series, I will share with you Hamilton Helmer's 7 Powers framework. Quick introduction of Hamilton Helmer. He is a renowned author who has spent decades studying successful businesses and their strategies. His book 7 Power distills his decades of insights into a practical framework. I personally keep a copy of the book just so I can refer back to it from time to time. I've included a link to the book in the video description so you can check it out. I always strongly recommend aspiring professional investors to equip themselves with the 7 Powers framework as soon as possible so that you can stand out against your competitors and compound your knowledge in different industries as you look at more companies. How can the 7 Powers framework help you in your stock research? Because it can help you ascertain whether a business is on the verge of establishing power or is capable of maintaining the power. Both have implications on the future financial performance and the valuation multiple it can command. All else equal, a business that can grow free cash flow at high rate without requiring high amount of incremental capital should get you paid well if you bought the stock at a reasonable price. Before we get into the 7 Powers framework, let's first understand on a first principle basis, what are businesses? Let's have a hypothetical business, Toadco. Every business needs to create value by generating profit. Toadco needs inputs, either raw materials, other products, or labor. The input suppliers are businesses too. They have an absolute minimum price at which they're willing to supply these inputs. But the suppliers want to generate profit as well. So they will want to supply Toadco at a price that's much higher than their WTS. That price becomes Toadco's cost of doing business. On the other hand, Toadco wants to generate profit by selling the goods at a price that is higher than its cost of doing business. So here comes the challenge. If you charge too low of a price, Toadco cannot earn a profit. If Toadco charges too high of a price, they cannot generate any sales and therefore no profits either. If a product or service indeed solves the problems for customers, customers have a maximum willingness to pay based on the value of that product and service. The problem is, a lot of time it's hard to know exactly what the customer's maximum willingness to pay is. So hopefully, Toadco can charge a price that is 1, higher than their cost of doing business. 2, is as close as possible to the customer's willingness to pay. As the goal of any business on this planet is to maximize profit, the 2 levers any business can pull to achieve that is either by lowering costs or increasing price. Profit margins differ across industries. Why is it? Industry structure and individual business strategies determine how much value a business or an industry can capture from a transaction. And the 7 Powers framework helps you assess the presence, strength, and the sustainability of competitive advantages of the companies you will research. To be more precise, the goal of any business is to maximize its ability to generate free cash flow, which is taking a step further by removing tax, net capital expenditure, and working capital away from operating profit. Because you need capital to grow and the government always takes a cut. What's the single most important metric that reveals whether a company is a good business? Return on invested capital. ROIC can be decomposed into net operating profit after tax margin, which measures profit per unit, and invested capital turnover, which measures capital efficiency. And it's a misconception to think a company has to have high profit margin to be a good business. Luxury goods definitely fall into the category of high profit margin because of brand and pricing power. But Costco and Home Depot rely on capital efficiency instead to generate high ROIC for having pretty mediocre profit margin. And now let's dive into the definition of power. Helmer defines power as sustained differential returns on invested capital versus competitors within the same industry. For example, a good business that generates 30% ROIC while its industry peers generates 5% over the same time period. That's a sustaining 25% differential ROIC. When you assess a company's power, remember 3 things. First, power has to be assessed within the context of its industry peers. Second, competition is not static. New entrants can creep up, Industry leaders' management can misexecute, and industry peers can change strategies to establish their own competitive advantages. Finally, a company has to generate excess ROIC for an extended period of time to constitute power. There are two requirements to power. It has to have benefit. The power needs to positively impact the business's free cash flow generation. If you look at the components of free cash flow, power needs to enable the business to increase price, lower cost, reduce capital expenditure or working capital requirements, or reduce tax. It also needs to establish barrier. The power needs to create obstacles that make competitors either unable or unwilling to drive down the profit for the entire industry. Bruce Greenwald, the author of Competition Demystified, argues that the barrier to entry is the most important force under the Michael Porter's 5 forces framework. Now, let's finally dive into the 7 powers themselves. Scale economics. Size matters, especially in industries that require high fixed cost investments. Relative scale advantage over direct competitors allow the industry leader to spread the fixed costs over a larger unit, resulting in declining unit costs as the business grows. The benefit is the company with the power has reduced cost. The barrier is it has high costs for new entrants to enter the market and gain market share. Let's do an example. Suppose company A sells a product that sells for $5 per unit and costs $3 per unit to make, and it sells 200,000 units. And the business requires $300,000 of fixed investment, regardless of how many units the company makes each year. So it would generate $100,000 of profit. Its total unit cost is $4.50 per unit, consisting of $3 of variable cost and $1.50 of fixed cost, which is the $300,000 spread over 200,000 units. If company B wants to enter the industry, first of all, it needs to charge $4 a unit to gain market share, assuming it still costs $3 per unit to make the good, and it needs to replicate the fixed cost of $300,000. Assume at first it can sell 40,000 units per year. The total per unit cost for company B will be $10.50, consisting of the same $3 of variable cost and $7.50 of fixed cost, which is the same $300,000 but spread over only 40,000 units. As a result, it will be unprofitable in the first year. So company A's scale advantage relative to company B allows it to enjoy a $6 per unit cost advantage. Helmer shared examples of scale economics in his book. Distribution network density will be one. A logistics network is a high fixed cost investment. The incumbent logistics provider can lower delivery cost per trip as network density grows, utilization increases, and more economic routes are developed. It will take a lot of capital and time for a new entrant to replicate such a network while having to live with much higher per unit delivery costs, as the new entrant will only do a fraction of the volume versus the incumbent. There's also learning curve. In industries that involve complex processes, it takes a large amount of units produced to perfect the process to produce either superior products or having the lowest production cost. The scale leader typically has a high relative advantage as the first starter. The best example on my mind is Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, TSMC. They are a semiconductor contract manufacturing company that commands a whopping 40% operating margin. Finally, there's purchasing power. Because Walmart and Costco are responsible for a large portion of some of their suppliers' revenue, they have the bargain power to push down on pricing and have lower unit costs than their competitor. Network economics. Network economics is when the value of the product to a customer increases as more customers use it. The benefit is the leader can charge higher prices. The barrier is the new entrant will face higher unit costs and lower pricing power for owning a lower value network with less users, regardless of whether it's a one-sided network or a two-sided network. Network economics occurs frequently in technology where winner takes all is the grand prize. One of the biggest advantages of the internet is there's virtually no incremental cost to serve a incremental user, and value of a internet platform increases non-linearly when a new user joins. For example, YouTube functions exactly like I just described. if there's one more creator who can create valuable content on the platform, more audience want to join YouTube. With more audience joining YouTube, more creators are incented to join the platform to create content, creating a virtuous cycle. And when one firm in the industry achieves critical mass, the other players give up. One of the most classic examples will be Google search. That said, new technology trends can weaken the incumbent's power while enabling disruptors. A prime example will be TikTok against Facebook and Instagram. Counter-positioning. Counter-positioning occurs when a new business model offers a superior value proposition and the incumbent does not want to or cannot respond because of the fear of damaging its existing market opportunity. For those who have read Clayton Christensen's book Innovator's Dilemma, you understand the incumbent's reluctance to lose its cash cow to venture into the unknown, thereby enabling the disruption. The benefit is the new business model is superior because of lower costs and or higher prices for providing a product with a better value proposition. The barrier is the incumbent does not want to respond to the disruptor because it either doesn't deem the new business model as credible or it does not want to damage their own core business. So many businesses became the new incumbent thanks to successful counterpositioning. Netflix came about because Blockbuster didn't deem delivering content over the internet to be a credible idea, and Blockbuster did not want to lose its cash cow of brick and mortar rental store. Sega seized the opportunity to launch the first ever 16-bit video game console, Genesis, which achieved sizable success in the North America market. At the time, Nintendo was having a lot of success with its 8-bit NES console, so Nintendo did not want to cannibalize sales by introducing its own next generation console, which gave Sega an opportunity to disrupt. Tesla has no burden of needing to serve the ICE auto market, and they focus exclusively on building the infrastructure to design and manufacture electric vehicles, while the incumbent, the Detroit Big Three, have to cater to the existing ICE market, which is still really big. With a dedicated focus on EV, Tesla is able to leapfrog and establish a massive learning curve lead. Switch costs. A great business offers so much monetary and or non-monetary value that customers have to think hard before considering an alternative. The benefit is the vendor has pricing power. The barrier is competitors have to compensate customers for switching. Switch costs can come in several forms. Most of us will think about the financial cost first. Some companies impose explicit penalties for breaking multi-year contracts, or customers risk losing discounted prices for a product bundle if they stop using one of the vendor's product within the bundle. There's also the implicit cost of lower productivity by switching from a software system like Workday, which has one of the highest gross retention rate in the software industry. Other intangible switch costs include procedural. Microsoft is probably the best example ever. Another example will be AutoCAD. Autodesk trains college engineering students on how to use AutoCAD in mechanical, civil, or industrial engineering. So how do you increase switch cost? Bundling and upselling is a typical way, and cable companies have perfected this strategy. Back in the days, they sell triple play bundles at a discounted price versus if you use only one of their services. If you disconnect one service, the bundle discount goes away, which creates a disincentive for you to switch. SaaS companies have a similar strategy called land and expand. They first sell their customers a core offering, and over time, upsell their customers more new products. As the SaaS company's product offering become more mature and complete, they can bundle the product together and sell a new customer a solution. A solution buyer is less likely to churn given they found value in more than one product inside the bundle. That said, switch costs can be destroyed during a big technological paradigm shift that renders all products within the bundle obsolete. Branding. The formal definition of branding as a power is buyer's attribution of higher value to an identical offering that arises from historical info about the seller. Most of us have made purchase decisions based on brand. The benefit is brands give companies pricing power, and it comes in one of the two forms. One is effective valence. It's a fancy way of saying you get a good feeling from using the product. Luxury goods are prime examples here, and Louis Vuitton bag does not have higher functional utility than maybe a Tumi bag. The latter is more well known for being durable for frequent travelers. I know many consultants who swear by the Tumi brand, but what luxury retail sells you is the status and the perception. When you carry an LV bag, you're perceived to be in a higher social class. As an investor, once you understand how high of a gross margin is for luxury goods, it's hard for me to be willing to pay that much of a markup for something that does not have much functional utility. That said, I do buy Ferragamo shoes because their shoes are very comfortable. And the other kind is uncertainty reduction, which is a peace of mind associated with a baseline expectation from the brand. This time I went back to China. I was on a group tour in Chengdu, Sichuan. For those who aren't familiar, Sichuan is known for their spicy dishes. And this guy in my tour group, he doesn't like spicy food. And he said he would just go eat McDonald's. Does McDonald's sell the best burger? No, but you know what you're getting regardless of where you are in the world. You could be in San Francisco, Chengdu, or Istanbul. You know what you're getting from McDonald's. And the same goes for other global brands like Starbucks. And the barrier created by branding is one, the cumulative marketing spend and execution to build a brand is a big deterrent to entry in an industry where brand matters a lot to gain consumer trust and value perception. For example, Tiffany piles big money into designing their stores and their signature blue bag to create a luxury feel. And that has translated to a 60% gross margin business. Or a business can have explicit brand protection via patent and copyright. In history, companies have mis-executed on brand. Examples include going down market. Coach once created a lower price line called Coach Poppy to attract younger consumers, but it diluted the brand's luxury appeal and alienated its core customer base. Tiffany sued Costco and eBay for selling fake goods. It wasn't Tiffany's fault that fake products exist, but it still hurts Tiffany's brand, and it remains Tiffany's responsibility to prevent the risk of compromising its own brand. And there's also changing customer taste. As we all know, Nintendo has successfully created many exclusive franchises like Mario and Pokemon. But the company failed to cater to the rising interest from adults in video gaming. But Nintendo's probably doing fine now. Corner resources. Corner resources are coveted assets for which the firm has preferential access to at attractive financial terms. The benefit can be pricing power due to scarcity and or lower cost. For example, in the basic materials industry, different assets have different production costs due to labor costs, attractive byproducts, or higher mine grades. The barrier can be patents to protect the replication of the asset or property rights to the scarce inputs. For example, to mines or to the unique talent. An asset has to pass 5 tests to be considered a corner resource. Idiosyncratic, it must be a particular resource that is unique and not available to others that help the firm generate superior return on invested capital. If the firm can consistently acquire unique resources not available to others, the acquisition process itself is instead the corner resource. It needs to be non-arbitrage. It means additional profit generated from the asset needs to exceed the price paid for the asset. If we ask Brad Pitt to make a movie and the movie does $100 million, but Brad Pitt gets paid $95 million, not much value accrued to the studio. It accrued to the actor. Then it's not a corner resource. It needs to be transferable. That means the resource needs to be able to create the same value at another company if the other company acquires it. It needs to be ongoing. The asset must create value over a long period of time. Finally, it needs to be sufficient, meaning the resource must create continued differential return. Processing power. Until I became a content creator who tried to start a business, I did not realize how important process is to any business. Unless you have established process so that others can crank the machinery to move the business forward without needing your presence, you don't own a business. You're just self-employed. A proven process or playbook is why McDonald's has 38,000 franchisees in over 100 countries. And for operationally complex businesses, a robust process can be the differentiator that helps it earn sustainable differential returns versus its peers. The benefit it provides is pricing power and or lower cost. The barrier is learning curve is going to be a big deterrent for new entrants because we can be talking about decades of compounded effort to perfect a complex process. That is, we assume the new entrant has the right culture, leadership, and organizational structure to even execute it. Helmer in the book gave the example of how Toyota invited Ford to tour its manufacturing plant, but Ford still couldn't replicate what Toyota does. TSMC will be again my example. In many other industries, an outsourced manufacturing service business is a low margin business that relies on scale to survive. TSMC commands a 40% operating margin because it's so operationally complex and mission critical in the semiconductor value chain. To me, processing power is hard to ascertain. I imagine a lot of scuttlebutting is required to gain conviction in the qualitative factors that drive the operational excellence. Typically, a good business with good processing power comes with some of the other six powers. So I will spend more time evaluating the strength of the other powers as a result of possible presence of processing power. Some of you might ask, is there a eighth power? When Helmer went on the Acquire podcast, the hosts asked him the same question, and he said he has not seen it after decades of experience consulting and investing across all industries, which suggests this framework can comprehensively help you understand any company you will ever analyze, work at, or try to create in your life. It's very important to note that businesses rarely rely on just one power. Instead, they leverage multiple powers to create a sustainable competitive advantage. Also remember, business competition is not static. You must pay attention to how different companies in the same industry evolve their strategy and the implication of who the winner and loser of the future is as a result of change in competitive strategy. Start applying the framework to the very next company you research so that you compound your understanding of different industries and companies. That wraps up the overview of the 7 Powers framework. Please give it a like and subscribe for future contents on stock investing, business analysis, and learning. Give it a comment if you have questions and thoughts. I'll talk to you next time. Peace.